So at the risk of sounding like a real newbie, this is the first time I have ever been streamed on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. We are
Thank
now
you.
officially live and streaming.
I'll tell you,
Um,
at the risk of sounding like a real newbie, this is the first time I have ever been streamed on YouTube.
Interesting. Did it just you? Congratulations. We are now officially live and
Oh, I think Julie, it's looping back your audio maybe. Weird.
hang on a second. Let me okay. It was my YouTube video playing in the background. My apologies. So I am gonna disappear. I guess Peggy will let us know about Pat, and then you guys, I'm here. If you need anything,
Okay,
just let me.
great. Thank you.
I do have a question, and that is related to where on YouTube is this, because it's not appearing in the YouTube link. So that was sent out on the website.
Well, it doesn't appear at that link until we go live. So it's there at that Chetco library link now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for checking that too.
Start the board retreat planning on strategic planning. It's on Zoom. And
Julie, can you make it so I can share my screen?
so text me
Oh, of
back.
course.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thanks.
I got voicemail for Pat, so I'm going to try texting her.
Sounds good.
She has been a little, obviously she's having some issues, so it's possible that you may need to proceed without her.
Okay.
I guess that's up to the board technically, but if she's unable to join, then I don't know.
So in my opinion, we could probably give us another minute or so, but if we don't reach Pat, we have a quorum, and seems to me we can start. So maybe around 6:05 or 6:06, something like that.
Sounds good.
Meanwhile, while we're waiting, Amanda, where are you located?
Yeah, I'm in central Illinois. So I'm in Champaign where it's already, 8 o'clock. So also my dogs are like, isn't it time to go to bed? But I've lived in central Illinois for most of my life after growing up in the Chicago area, but came down to school at the university here and never left. Really love it here in Champaign, Urbana. Wish I could be visiting all of you on the West Coast, but it is a beautiful time of year here in central Illinois.
Yes, it is a beautiful place. My daughter took a job down there at the university, and her husband had a job at the university also, and we were there to visit them. It's a beautiful campus.
Yes, yes. I live about a mile from campus and I'm over there pretty frequently. My daughter goes to the university high school. So, and her high school is right on the north end of campus. So get to hang out there a lot.
Great. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Your kid.
It's like 4 hours drive from Chicago.
Yes.
Of course, it's a long drive through a lot of cornfields.
Yeah, depending on the day. Sometimes it's a couple hours, sometimes it's a lot longer than that, depending on traffic. Your kids are not here anymore, though, too.
No. Kids have gone to the Four Winds, and that's tough. No, they're no longer there. They're now in Sacramento. Those two are in Sacramento.
Gotcha.
We have others in other places, mostly West Coast, though.
Yeah.
I have a grandson and his family that live in Manhattan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I grew up in Joliet and they were in our sports conference, so I know exactly where that is.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I've also sent a message to a friend of mine that is in constant communication with Pat. So just go ahead and I'll let you know if I hear anything from either one.
Okay, that sounds good. Everybody's good with just go ahead and getting started tonight. Okay, fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I know that we've had to reschedule this, and the staff has already had their conversation, so I appreciate your time this evening. Again, I'm Amanda Standifer, and I'm a librarian and library consultant based in Central Illinois. I've been working in libraries for the last 25 years at this point. I 2 years ago left my full-time job and just concentrated on doing strategic planning consulting. It was always kind of my side gig for a long time. And then, like a lot of people during the pandemic, kind of took stock and decided this is what I wanted to do full-time. So I now work with libraries all over the country, mostly strategic planning, but other types of staff development, organizational development, that kind of thing. Also worked in the philanthropy sector for a couple of years. So I've worked a lot with community foundations. I still work with a lot of community foundations, and also worked for a family foundation for a while too. So I have kind of a nonprofit / library background. I'm excited to talk to all of you tonight to hear your thoughts on the data that we've gathered so far as part of our process and get your thoughts about what you want to see for the future. We do have 3 hours scheduled, but we're a small group, so we might not need that whole time. So don't, worry if we end up wrapping up early. It's just because we took the time that we needed for our conversation. I know that Julie sent you this handout, and I want to use this to do a little kind of introduction and just orientation to our process, and then I'll talk about what we're going to do with our time together. And I'll start here on the top left, just as a reminder of what we've been doing as part of our strategic planning process. We spent quite a bit of time in what I call the learn phase. So we started back in the spring. Seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. And that was with our community survey. The board and staff members also took a survey. We looked at a lot of demographics and library data. That all came together in the learning report that I'm going to talk about here in just a little bit. That was one piece of data that informed our process and really grounded us for a conversation for the phase that we're now in, which we call the dream phase. So we need to kind of take that current snapshot, that perception of the library, and add our lived experience with the library, our hopes and dreams for the future. So the staff had their retreat session on September 9th, and we're having the board tonight. And then we'll move into the do phase. And this is where we'll start to put together plan documents. I'll work with Julie and Kat to refine those. We'll bring those back to you, the board, to review and also refine. And then from there, once we feel good about the plan, we'll move to implementation. And what that means is that we'll think about those activities, the data, the measures of success, the reporting. How do we actually use this plan to work towards the future, the goals that we've set out? So that's been our process so far. We'll be wrapped up by, I know this says September to October, and we're almost to the end of October. I think we'll be transitioning to implementation for sure by the end of the year. That transition will take a couple of months. So I would say by, end of January, into February, Julie and staff will be feeling pretty good about where they're headed with the plan. But again, that transition does take a little while. So we want to give them some time to really fully move forward with that. On the bottom of this first page is the framework that we've been using for our strategic planning process. This is just a visualization of the different pieces of a strategic plan. And this is called the Golden Circle Framework. It's from Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. I love it because I love the golden why in the middle, that bullseye. In a strategic plan, you need to be able to explain, why is the library important to the community? Why should people care about the library? And that translates to a vision and mission statement. We're going to talk about vision and mission here in a little bit, but essentially a vision statement is what your aspiration is. What is it that you hope to see in the community because you've carried out your mission as a public library? So your mission is much more concrete, really communicates, here's what we do as an organization in order to see the change that we want to see in our community and support people and all of those aspirations we have. And then everything flows out from those why statements. So what does that mean we are going to be working toward? How are we going to do it? Our strategic directions and goals. So those are our priorities, our big buckets of work that we're going to focus on with individual things within those that we care about and we want to see progress on. And then the farthest out circle. So what does that mean we do on a daily basis? And that's our activities. So all the work that the staff does and evaluation. How will we know that we're making a difference? How will we see that progress? What's the data that we'll see? And then what's also the stories that we'll hear from our community. I'm sorry, my camera's going to go in and out being fuzzy and not being fuzzy. I don't know why it does that, but you'll just see me blurry for a moment. So you'll see on kind of the right side of this graphic, the board's responsible for that vision and mission statement, those kind of foundational statements. And then you have overlap with the staff on those strategic directions and goals. And indeed, the staff talked about some of that at their retreat session. So I'll share some of that as we go along this evening. And then staff mostly spent their time in this activities and evaluation. That's really where their expertise is. So they spent a lot of time thinking about, what do we really want to see happen if we're going to work towards some of these goals, even though they're not kind of fully formed in our mind yet. What are the things that we can do with staff to make that change happen? So as we go through our time together, you'll start to kind of see how some of these pieces are starting to come together. Okay, so what are we going to do with our time tonight? That's on the top right over here, our agenda for our time. I'll finish up kind of giving this introduction, and then we'll move right into the learning report. So I'm going to give you some background about the data. And sorry that you're hearing crazy dogs. I'll give you some background about the data, some of the highlights, some of the things that I noticed. Then I want to hear from you, like, what do you think are those priorities? What do you really care about? What are kind of those big buckets of work that you want to see going forward? And from there, we'll take a little bit of a break. I want to kind of organize my thoughts because this areas of focus is where we're going to spend most of our time. So once you all say, here are areas that we think we could really make a difference in, let's dig into those a little bit. And we might not be able to go into like a ton of detail on all of them, but I want to spend some time getting your thoughts on how do we move forward in some of these areas. After we do that, so we'll kind of, we have a little kind of mini agenda within this areas of focus. After that, we'll work on vision and mission. So you have current vision and mission statements that we'll use kind of as a starting place, like how do we feel about these statements? Do we want to see any changes? And then we'll just kind of start to wrap up, what's really sticking out in your mind after our conversation. Did we miss anything that you really wanted to talk about that we didn't? And what's kind of next steps, which really involves, me putting together some documents, working with Julie and Kat on those, and then coming back to you with a draft plan for your input. And then, like I said, that transition to implementation, which will happen towards the end of the year. Okay, that was just a whole bunch of kind of getting us like grounded in our process, our framework, our time, what we're going to do with our time together. Let me pause for a second, see if any of you have questions at this point.
I did just hear from my friend, and she happens to know where Pat is, and that she had a conflict that ran late. And so I sent her word that she could check in when she gets back to her home. She moves very slowly. She's having to use a walker since her medical problems. So we'll see if she can make it.
Okay, that sounds good. If she pops in, we'll just catch her up on what we've been talking about and get her into the process. Good deal. Okay, so let's talk about the learning. Let me pause again for a second. Any other questions or thoughts before we dig into the learning report? Nope, good. Okay, cool. Okay, let's talk about the learning report. So I hope you all had a chance to take a look at the data that we put together. There was a lot there, so I want to go through some of the things that stood out to me, some of the highlights, and then I'm going to ask for your thoughts on that, and I'll take notes on my second screen over here. Really, we put together this report to inform this discussion. This is not the type of report that the consultant gives you, and then you say, okay, yep, this is what we're going to do. We're not that kind of consultant. We want to hear what you think is important. And we see this data as kind of a snapshot of your current perception from your community, internally within the library, changes in demographics and usage. So it's really just intended to be supporting your conversation this evening. Your lived experience in the community and with the library, same with the staff, is really important to making those decisions about the future. So I hope you didn't read it and think, oh, these are all the things we should do, because that's really not the point of it. The point was that we talk about it tonight. So let me go through some of the sections. There was the first part, which had library statistics. And this is really intended to give you a picture of usage of the library. And especially as we're looking at kind of the bounce back, right? You know, we're 4 years now, almost 5 years past 2020, when of course we saw the huge drop off. And so what we're looking for is, you know, what are the trends kind of going forward? And as you looked through those charts, I hope you saw that there were some really strong usage numbers there. The couple of places where it wasn't maybe quite back to where it was before 2020, in computer usage, that's a trend that we're seeing across the country, that people seem to have devices of their own now and have better access to internet, especially kids, you know, that are in school. So it wasn't surprising to us that maybe your computer usage wasn't quite back, or not back to where it was from before 2020. And Julie, if you have any thoughts about why that is, or things that you're noticing, you can certainly weigh in on that. And then the other part was your library card holders were still down a little bit. I suspect that's because maybe you've done a purge of card holders, or maybe you weren't like doing renewals in a certain way before 2020, and maybe now you are. So Julie, I'll let you comment on those two things.
Okay, so on the cards, I suspect, so we had a bit of a surge a couple of years before COVID, because we worked with the schools to get every student a card. And then we haven't continued that. That's basically the reason. Is, you know, there were some questions, community questions, about kids having cards without, you know, parental permission. So we just haven't. So I think that's the drop.
Gotcha.
And what was the first one you said? Oh, computer.
It was computer usage. Yep.
Yeah. I think it's exactly what you said. I mean, there were so many efforts during COVID to get people devices and better internet that, yeah, people just got used to not having to come to the library to do it. They figured it out and didn't come back.
Yeah.
But I mean, we still have a fair amount of use, but definitely not as much, obviously.
For sure. Yeah, those folks that still rely on the library for computer usage, like that's vital to them and really important. But again, we're seeing all over the country that libraries are starting to take some of their computers off the floor so they can use those for other things. Because maybe they don't need 8 computers, they only need 4 or 5 computers. So they're finding, use for that space if they're able to make those changes. Okay, so that was the library statistics, a couple things that I noticed there. The next section was about demographic trends, and I'm going to give you all plenty of time to kind of talk and debrief this. I'm just going to give my thoughts here up front. Demographic changes, so we looked at the communities you serve. We have to really kind of focus in on census tracts, so we looked at the 2 big communities there. There was a 7% increase in populations in Brookings, but a 9% decrease in Harbor. So that was kind of interesting, kind of the way population is moving. Definitely increase in diversity, lots of different kinds of diversity in both of your communities. So that's something to think about, especially the section on diversity in school age children. That's, not obviously everyone will stay in the communities you serve, but we're noticing that, the younger population is a lot more diverse. And so that's something to consider, like something happening outside the library that, if we're going to serve that type of population, what are the things that we need to be thinking about? The biggest section of the report is your community survey. And a couple things there. We got 305 responses to the survey, which was really great. And I know you might be thinking like, well, we serve a much larger population than that. So 305 people is not fantastic. And I'm here to tell you, no, it is really great. We are happy if we get 1% or more. It's really hard to get people to fill out surveys. And that 305 represented 2.1% of your service area. So again, you got more than we hoped for. And that's great. I think the most we've ever gotten is 5%. So you're, solidly in the middle of kind of, our what we hope to get and our like high end of what we have gotten. So it was a great response rate. Most of the folks who responded are card holders. So 90.5% are people that have cards. I like when I see a high number of card holders on a survey like this, because that means they know about what you're doing and they can comment about the future, what they care about. So it's coming from a place of strength, right? So these are people that are invested in you in some way by at least having a card. 8.5% no, they didn't have a card, and 1% were not sure. So we did hear from some folks that aren't as connected, which is always good to have those voices mixed in. Let's see, 67.5% of the respondents were 60 plus. Not unusual that that is kind of leaning that way, but it's something to keep in mind. I mean, relative to your population, that was out of proportion with the population you serve. We see that a lot, that, you know, folks that are in that kind of senior or retired category have more time to fill out these kinds of things, feel a different maybe level of civic participation. So just, you know, as we're talking about the survey results, just remember that, again, this isn't perfect data. It's intended for learning purposes. So we can't say like, well, this represents a cross section of the community. It doesn't really. It represents people who responded, right? We did not hear a lot from the under 40 group. And I mean, they were there, but it was definitely not proportional to your community. That's not surprising either. It's sad. We would like to hear more from that population. That's a very busy group, right? You know, families working, all of that sort of thing. To me, that represents an opportunity for, you know, further cultivating those relationships with those folks. So the next time you do this, you might hear from more of them. Their voices are there, just not, again, in proportion with your with your population. We asked about their overall satisfaction, and this is something that I look at when these surveys close and my team sends me the data. The first thing I look at is that overall satisfaction. 78.7% of your respondents said that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the library overall. It's pretty good. Would you like to see it higher? Of course. But it's a good solid number, and I think it's something you should be proud of. And I think it's something that, you know, you can use this plan to really dig into, you know, what would help people be more engaged or feel, you know, better about the library. And I don't know if any of you are Washington Post readers, but there was recently a really great article, Julie, I think I sent it to you today, about they had done a big study of library uses like across the country and like why people go and what different types of demographics care about what. And so that article came out too late for us to make any, you know, speculation relative to your community, but it was interesting to hear, you know, changing needs of people and what they want from the library and how that then translates to their overall satisfaction and usage of the library. So those are things, you know, we can think about and talk about today. When we asked what are about specific things, what are you satisfied with? The number one thing they said was customer service. And I think that's fantastic. That shows that your staff really cares. When I met with your staff, I could definitely tell that they really cared about people having a good experience, making sure people had access to things that they needed, feeling like they were making connections with people. So it was great to see that there was high satisfaction for that. Second was your building. So people are comfortable, feel welcome there. That's great. And third was access to the collection. And I loved that this was the number 3 thing that people were satisfied with, because that means that they're able to get what they want in terms of materials through your library. So that was awesome to see. Let's see, a couple other things here. What do they value about the library? The respondents said they value that help from staff. So that ties right in with that feeling satisfied with customer service. They value that you have materials to check out. So again, that access, and they value your programs and events. And to me, that says that they're glad that you are a place that they can come to learn things, that they can come to meet people or just, you know, be in community. So that was really cool to hear. When we asked them, where do you find out about the library? And this is really important for, you know, reaching people in the community. Number 1 was the website. So people do go look there for information. Number 2 is Facebook. So again, remember, age 60 plus, kind of weighed a little heavy there. Those folks are on Facebook. Obviously, other social media attracts different age groups. So it wasn't surprising that Facebook was number 2, but interesting. Third, a flyer or poster in the library. So again, people have cards, they're coming in, they see things, and they engage with that. And then closely right behind that was the library's newsletter. I was a little surprised the library's newsletter was 4th instead of 2nd or 3rd. And that's potentially an area of growth that we can talk about. A lot of other libraries, if they've got a newsletter, it usually is in the top 3. Yours was 4. It was a very close number 4. So that's not a criticism of the newsletters, it's an observation. When we asked what do you want to see in the future? They said, number one, we want print books. And so to me, again, we have to remember the population that responded, but to me that says the mission of the library is still very strong and is something that people care about and want. Number two, digital materials. So, you know, that's good that people that like digital materials feel there's a future in the library offering that, definitely not going away. Three was meeting rooms. So again, a place in the community people can come together or just meet or do work or, you know, whatever. And number four was programs for different age groups. I think seniors was higher up than maybe for children. Again, population that responded was leaning towards seniors, so that made sense to me. But it also reinforced the idea that people want to come to the library to meet people, to learn things, you know, to be in community. And then there was a whole section about program topics and ideas, and I hope that section gave staff some ideas of some things that people would like to see in the future. Okay, the final section was the board and staff survey. There were 17 respondents to that. There were a lot of open-ended questions there, and the way we approached the open-ended questions in the community survey and the board and staff survey is that those are summaries of the responses. We don't quantify those or code those in any way and rank them, because we want you, the board and the staff, to see all of the responses versus seeing, you know, well, most people said this versus this, so that means we should do this, because that's not always the case. You want to consider all of the responses. So if it appeared in the summary, that means at least one person said it. But, you know, a lot of times, a lot of people said the same thing. So we summarized what they said. Same thing in the board and staff survey. When we asked, you know, what are kind of your concerns, there were several staff things listed there: wages, retention, training. We see that a lot. You know, people want to feel valued and connected to their work. Staff talked about this a little bit at their retreat, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. And then we asked, what do you think the focus should be for the future? Early literacy came up as number one, freedom to read number two, and community engagement number three. So that was interesting too. You may have, you know, as you read through, if you got really in depth in the report, you might have been frustrated if there were things that, you know, you're doing already or feel that, you know, are going smoothly and there were comments about it. It's pretty normal to see some things that maybe, you know, people don't know about the library or wish they knew more about. A lot of times people will fill out a survey like this with current things that you're doing because they want to make sure they don't go away, that they care about them, and so do more of this. So that's kind of normal. Sometimes people ask for things that you could never do, but, you know, give people an open box and they can type whatever they want in there. So some of the things might have, you know, I know especially staff was kind of like, well, I don't know what they mean by that, but that's okay. You know, we want to hear that feedback. And sometimes, you know, there's complaints about things that people don't like, and, you know, we want to hear that too. We want to know what things are that we could address or help people understand better or respond to in different ways that would be good for the community. Just those are kind of some general observations. We did have a whole appendix that broke down that community data a little bit more too, if you wanted more specifics there. Okay, that's a very brief overview of your learning report. I want to hear from you all now. What did you think about the data? What are some of the things that stood out to you? What questions do you have? Really just looking kind of for your feedback and reaction, questions even. So who would like to get us started on that?
So I'll jump in first. This is Kathleen. I was pleased, and it stood out to me that 3 out of 4 of our constituents are satisfied or very satisfied with our library. And I say that because sometimes the perception can be that maybe we're not doing the kind of job that our community wants us to do. And so that number stood out to me as that's good to know. We still have 1 out of 4 that aren't necessarily as happy with us. And so those would be the people I would, you know, try to understand what it is that they're missing. I mean, I know to a certain extent, but dig into it a little deeper and perhaps find ways to make them feel like their library is for them as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, Kathleen, thank you. Peggy or Sue?
Well, I just have a comment that our library has quite a good reputation. We have a sizable number of people who do not live in the district who pay a higher card fee to be able to use our services. And primarily that's because they want access to the digital resources that we have, Hoopla and Libby and so on. And so I have friends who live in the Crescent City area 30 miles away, and they're willing to drive to come up here because they like our library so much. And so I just wanted to make sure we got that in too.
Okay.
I can say, Peggy, that I talked to a person who lives in Del Norte and works up here just a week ago. And she said, oh, the library card fee increased. And I said, well, you don't maybe understand, but all the other local libraries are charging $100. They are, you know, so it's just a general lack of knowledge for a lot of people. They don't understand why the fee increased. They don't understand what the local resident is paying. But that she did not say she was going to stop coming. She paid her fee. So clearly, even though she didn't like it, it was within the tolerable bounds. As far as the survey itself goes, I actually went through this learning report very thoroughly. And this is probably not where you want to jump in, but I thought my overall impression was that I wish that we had better than 2% return. I recognize what you said, Amanda, that that's considered good in the business, but it's a little frightening because it's hard to make long-term decisions on 2% of the body. So that's a little tough. Additionally, there's things in the learning report, and I think probably one of the overwhelming impressions I got is that just as our community is aging and our older population has more time to fill out surveys and use library resources, there still maybe needs to be an emphasis on what that older population wants and needs, which is in the form of shut-in services and activities that appeal to them. Here's a harebrained, why not have an opera night? You know, every Wednesday night, play opera in the forest room. I mean, I have 30 DVDs of, Blu-ray discs of opera, and that might draw people in. So I think what I'm trying to say is we need to identify things that will, and this is partly the staff's job, and I recognize that, but I think we need to identify things that will help people feel connected to the library and interested in what's going on in the library. Another comment I'll make is that one of the things I think could really help in this department, again, I'm getting the cart before the horse here, Amanda, and I apologize, but I think maybe a weekly or bi-weekly, what did I call it? I called it a bi-weekly library topic, where each bi-weekly email to the library card holders at large would cover a different topic. Maybe this week we talk about Libby, maybe that week we talk about Spanish language resources, maybe the next week we talk about how to use browsers or email, or maybe how to use Hoopla, but a continuing series of emails that are short. People do not want to read long emails, just really short. And did you know that we have Tooele Indians in our area and this is their ancestry? Or did you want to know more about gardening? You'll find that in Dewey Decimal Number, blah, blah. You know, and so there's just short, hey, we're here, little emails to put forward the library's interest into people's emails. So I will stop talking about that for a minute. I'm interested though what Kathleen was saying. Kathleen, I wasn't really clear what people were saying that they did or didn't like.
I wasn't commenting on specifics. I was just noting that of the public, of their satisfaction with the library overall, nearly 80% of respondents were satisfied, and that helped, that made me feel good about what we're doing, because it's not always clear from the vocal folks from the community, you know, how many aren't as happy. That sometimes sounds louder than it actually is when compared to the overall survey count. And that was all. I was just pleased to see that was the case.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to press you on that. I was just curious exactly what you might have meant, and I'll make one comment, then I'll stop talking so Amanda can get back to the presentation. And that is, in an academic setting, an 80% is not, 79% is not exactly a stellar grade. So I know that we're not talking about academics here, you know, you're pulling a high C. And so from that standpoint, that is not as much to crow about as we might like, but also recognizing the limitations of this survey and the respondents to our pool, 2% of our people. So it's an interesting thing to think about. So now I'll stop talking, Amanda. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is about you all tonight, but I do want to comment on a couple of things you all said because I think it's interesting. Yeah, the data is definitely not perfect. 2% is not a lot. And I think that's why it's not a mandate, right? It's not a, here's what you should do because 2% of your population said this. You know, we have to take it through the lens of what it is. And, you know, I think even if, let's say we had 50% community response, like it's still hard then to say, okay, people said this, so we should do this because, you know, there's lots of other factors that they maybe don't know about, funding and other kind of situations that libraries have to deal with in general. So that's why we have these conversations. And, you know, we're not making any final decisions tonight either. We're just going to talk about what's on our minds, what's priorities. And then part of my job is to go back and organize all of that to bring back to you, along with the staff feedback as well. And yeah, I like kind of the two lenses that Sue and Kathleen are presenting of like, well, 78%, you know, on one hand, it's pretty good because we have kind of, you know, a pretty good majority support here. But if you're thinking academically, you know, that is a little bit lower. I mean, still passing, right? Let's remember that. And so that's kind of hard to like, you know, how do we judge that? You know, I like to say 80% or over for satisfaction is really great. And that's why I said there's room for improvement for you guys. 78% is strong. There's definitely room for improvement. You know, I know that there are hard times for libraries, and I know your library has experienced some of that too. So I think we have to, again, remember that there's a lot of outside influences right now, just on lots of different levels. And that could be influencing, you know, people's perceptions there as well too. So it might not even be like, well, what could the library do to change that or increase it? It could be, how does the library kind of respond to how the world is changing in lots of different ways? And I think, you know, I think the library does that already. I think libraries in general do that, but, you know, just in talking with the staff, some of the adjustments and things that they have done as well too. And again, that's part of our job tonight is to like, all right, well, what would help? And I appreciate, Sue, that you've already come up with some ideas. That's awesome. Okay, other thoughts, questions about the data before we kind of start to narrow down some of the topics we do want to dig into a little bit more? Anything else standing out to you or concerns you had about anything else?
First of all, I just heard from Pat, she's going to try and join us. She wanted to know if we were very far along, and I said we barely started. So hopefully she can. Since her medical issues, she's got a vision problem, so it may take her a while.
Okay.
Okay. One thing I wanted to mention is I was pleased to see in the report how much people are valuing the meeting rooms. And with the renovations that we did, more meeting room space is available for small groups, which often are really hard if you want to get a group of people together and you just need half a dozen chairs. It's hard to find a place in town that you can do that for free. And we have our library saying, come in. If we've got room, we'll put you. And then we recently got that new standalone facility, a big, like a telephone booth where tutors can get inside of it and tutor students without being disturbed by anybody else. And I really think that's wonderful. So the meeting room thing brings people in of all kinds of varieties. And a group I belong to, setting up for the annual bazaar, we needed a meeting space for 6 people to register all these vendors that were going to call in. And some of them had not been in the library before. And so I was really happy that I drug them in there. So I think that's one of our attributes that we should be really proud of.
Yeah, that's great, Peggy. Thank you. Okay, Pat, I see that you've joined. Are you able to hear us and use your microphone? You're muted right now, so I don't know if you're able to unmute and let us know that you're there.
I'm here.
Awesome. Well, we're right now just talking about the data from the report that we put together. So any thoughts you have or questions you have about the data, now's a time to interject that if you would like.
Thank you, but I'm going to be a silent listener to this meeting.
All right.
Yeah, I know it's difficult for other people to understand that about me, but it's true. I can do it.
Okay. Well, we might call on you at different times, but we will just assume that you are there kind of listening.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Sue or Kathleen, anything else on the data that you want to call out?
I just want to say, yay, Pat. Glad to hear your voice.
Glad to have a voice.
Glad you have a voice. I don't have any more questions about the data. I think you pretty thoroughly covered it. The aging demographic. You mentioned that there was very few responses by 30-year-olds and younger, and I would qualify that by observing that those are the very people who are taking care of the children, and there were responses about children. So yeah, I mean, as far as what they might personally want, they were more speaking for children than they were for their own demographic.
One other thing I wanted to mention is expanding into different areas. An example is allowing our large room, the forest room, to be used by a chair yoga class. And although publicity in our community has really been challenging lately because of the demise of the local newspaper or the downplaying of it and so on, but that room is so crowded that we've had people that decided they couldn't come anymore because they couldn't stretch their arms out. And so when we do offer something that's of interest, it really gets the attention.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kathleen, anything else from you?
Not really.
No. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. This next section, I want to give you all a couple of moments here to think about your top priorities. And that worksheet I showed at the beginning, if you're following along on that, if you have it printed out and you're taking notes, it's that section that says, what are your top 3 priorities going forward? And so I just want to give you a moment here to jot down some notes, and then I'm going to ask each of you to give me your thoughts there. This will help us determine kind of the rest of what we want to focus on. So maybe just take a minute or two while I get my notes caught up over here, and then we'll see who's ready to give those top 3 priorities. Give you another moment here. Okay, Sue, are you ready to tell us your top 3? All right, let's hear them.
I actually have 6, so I'm going to try to cull this down to 3.
Okay.
So one thing that is not actually mentioned in here, but I think is a top priority for the library, is to demonstrate fiscal accountability. And one of the parts of that is developing the capital replacement report and designating an amount to be saved each year with a inflation index, because inflation continues to grow. And we just did a major remodel of our library, you may know, Amanda. And so now we need to start building for the next set of repairs and replacements. And as I understood it, Julie was working on this project. For me, this is like number one on the list, because we can't tell the community that we're looking out for their best interest when we're not taking care of this very important task. So that's my first one. My second one would be probably the outreach to seniors. I mentioned that earlier. I won't go into that again. I think that's really critical, since our aging population here is active in the library and wants use of the resources. There's a number of people who don't have the ability to physically come to the library, so outbound or homebound services and that sort of thing. And then probably the other one is an idea about how do we fill in that 30-year-old demographic, 30 and under, down to high school. So maybe the 18 to 30 years old. Well, those are the very folks that are going to our local community college. Those are those folks. So we need to stretch out of our comfort zone and interact with the community college on a more personal level. One of the ways I thought we might be able to do that would be to provide information to those students about what kinds of careers there are available in this town, what kind of training would be necessary to go to those careers. We have a fairly comprehensive set of instructions for nursing students that are supported by our local community college. They're doing a great job in that department. But there are other things that we do. We have, all the technical support services here with internet, and we have air conditioning, and we have electricity, and we have all of these other very important things that we need in our community. But as our children go off to community college, they learn tasks that take them away from us. And so we have basically a brain drain going on in our community. And I really think the library is in a position to help address that problem, and perhaps be able to encourage them to stay longer and open businesses. So even the basics of running a business, what does that mean? I mean, we work in the business world, myself and my husband, and the number of people who don't really understand the basics of how to run a business, how to capitalize their business, how to do these kinds of things is, if they can't do those things, then they're defeated before they even get out of the gate. So so the capital replacement, the seniors, and the age group that's in the community college level, those would be my focuses.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Kathleen, would you go next?
Sure. So one thing I'd like to see us put our effort toward is increasing the digital opportunities. For instance, Hoopla and Libby, from what I understand, and I've experienced this myself, Hoopla, we have so many people using it right now that you can't get books 9 times out of 10 because the limit's already been reached. I would like to see us put more money into that. That I think would help the seniors that Sue was talking about. Granted, not everybody is techie, but there are plenty of us above the age of 60 who are. And I think that would go a long way towards making them feel as though their library was working for them. So that would be one thing. I would like to see us get more, I want to say more creative, more do a bit more around the area of children's programming. And I realize we're in a transition right now. We just our children's librarian retired, and the program is being rebuilt or built up more, perhaps. And I would like to see us just continue to focus on that. The kids in this town, although we do lean demographically older, there are still plenty of families in town. And the more that they know is available for them and their children at the library, the more likely I think they're going to be to come and check us out. And the more likely their children are going to be to become lifelong readers. Because in my mind, if you can catch a child when they're young and teach them about the wonder of books and the beauty of information in libraries, then you will create a lifelong reader, and that person will grow on to, be a much happier and much more well-informed citizen, et cetera, et cetera. I agree with Sue that the age group 18 to 30 could stand some attention. I'm not sure how much we could be involved. I know that SWAC currently gives business courses now through their business department for anybody who's starting a small business, et cetera. It's like a 4-month program, I believe. And I think it's been going well. It's very popular. So perhaps there's a way we can somehow support that. I don't know. And then the last thing, since it's harder and harder in this town for anybody to get the word out about what they're doing, including the library, I would like to see us become the place where if you want to know what's going on in town, you come to the library, or you go to their website, or you check out the reader board that I hope we eventually get put up, or something. Our Facebook page could perhaps be more widely promoted. Facebook does happen to be one of the main places for people age 50 and up to get information. But I don't know what we do in terms of Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And maybe that's something that staff would like to look into. I don't know. But I do think that we hold a unique position in the community in that we have a community gathering place whereby people, if they want to know what's going in town, they could come to us and they could find that out in whatever way that works. I don't know the particulars. I just think that we're missing an opportunity by not capitalizing on who we are, where we are, and what we are.
Mhm.
So that would be my 3.
Okay, thanks, Kathleen. Okay, Peggy, how about you?
Well, we're kind of touching on similar themes here. One of the things that I put down is to find out new ways to reach the community, which is exactly what you two are talking about with the younger age group. But new ways could be my second point, which is develop new partnerships. And we have partnerships, but perhaps there's a way to expand those. And an example, of course, is what Kathleen said about the community college. Is there a way that we can help promote activities here that are happening at the community college? And then another thing that I put down is continue to look at our improvements, and of course with budget always in mind. But some of the things I put down is I'd like to see us be able to expand our hours, but in order to be able to do that, we're going to have to expand our payroll. So again, it's a budgetary issue, but if there's a group that needs to have an evening meeting, we're not usually open in the evenings, and so that's a challenge. And so that's an example as well. We've been talking about a drop box so that people who have limited mobility, or if it's raining, can pull up and drop their books in without having to get out of the car. We're going to work on the parking lot to improve it and the access in and out. And the signboard that Kathleen mentioned, I think a digital signboard somewhere that it's very visible to the community could go a long ways towards not just promoting library activities, but also community activities. It just is really challenging to get the word out there anymore. I don't go to the library website very often. And I don't think very many people probably do on a regular basis. So it's one part, but it's not the only thing that we should be trying to do. And the local newspaper is losing membership. For example, my own subscription somehow just disappeared. And I've been trying to find out from them what happened to it, and I'm not getting any answers from them. And so I won't be surprised to see that it's no longer a very viable thing. So at any rate, those were some of my thoughts.
Okay. Hey,
Hey,
Peggy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say, Peggy, about your observation about our local newspaper. Several years ago when they were bought, they changed focus and went to reporting not local news, but rather international and nationwide news. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I just get out my cell phone and find out what's going on that level, but I can't go any place and find out what's happening in my town. And I think that's a really big hole that should be filled. And apparently there's no profit for the local paper in that because they don't cover that. So we need to maybe come up with a different organ that would meet that need.
Now, there's a couple of ways, like the Insider does a good job of promoting local events, but how many people actually pick it up out of our general population?
Yeah,
So-
and one of the drawbacks with the Insider, I don't think it's changed, is they need the information like 30 days ahead of time to get it into the Insider, because I believe they only print once a month. And, we've had an awful hard time getting anything in there because I don't think about it quick enough. So
That is correct.
there's
It has to
that.
be it has to be very far in advance,
Yep.
for sure.
And Amanda, you may not realize this, but our local TV stations are not local, they're Medford. And so, and they're expensive. So small groups that are doing activities find it challenging.
Mhm.
Okay. That's all good to know. Pat, do you have 3 priorities you'd like to talk about or want to add on to anything else that's been said?
Well, maybe not 3, but I have a slightly different concern. Right now, it seems to me that when people think of the library, they think of us as having problems. There was a lot of negative publicity about the library for one reason or another this past year, and I think it's a concern to me, and I'm not sure how we could straighten that out. But inviting people to come to our meetings and seeing that even if we disagree with one another, we still get along with one another, I think is really important. And it's difficult. We're meeting at night now, and that means dark and rain. So we're going to have to watch and make sure that the amount of people that continue to our nightly meetings keeps up there so that we don't go back to early morning meetings. And the second thing, I'm just duplicating what someone else has said about reaching out to a lot of seniors. When I tell people that I'd have shot myself at the hospital if I hadn't been able to listen to audiobooks for free from the library, I've had a lot of people say, "What library? Audiobooks?" Well, I get them on Amazon and I pay $26 a book or $20 a book or whatever. So I think that everybody at both hospitals that I've been staying at now know that you can go to our library. And if you're in Crescent City, yes, you can pay an annual fee and go to our library. But I don't think we're reaching out to seniors enough, and maybe working with the Chetco Activity Center on some basis would be a good idea. Maybe just speaking at one of their lunches or doing something like that. I think that's important because most of my friends are my age, and that means older than dirt. Sorry, Peggy, you're a friend of mine.
And I'm the same age as you are.
Yeah, I know you're a month older. Come on, give me a break. But anyhow, I think while I'm concerned about the young kids, and I've been really happy with the programs that we've had in the past and hope they continue under new guidance. But reaching out and getting more seniors involved, because a lot of them have volunteer time too that we could use. Anyhow, that's it.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. Okay. Here's what I'd like to do. I didn't grab my water bottle before I logged on, so I need a moment to go get my drink, kind of get my thoughts organized about what we're going to do with this next chunk of our time. So let's take about a 5-minute break. My clock right now says it's 7 o'clock your time. So let's come back at like 5 or 7 minutes after the hour. So once I'm going to turn off my video and my mic, but once you're back, if you want to show that you're back. So once everybody's back, we'll get started again. So, all right, take just a few minute break here.
The Kotlin-based Dragula Roadster made a Fast and Furious appearance in the Hot Rod Herman episode of this comedy. Stephanie.
What is the Munsters?
Yes.
It's a Peninsula 400.
Hey, Pat,
Yeah.
you might want to mute. I think we hear your TV or something. Is
Okay. Thank you.
that you? Yeah, I think it was. I'm not sure, but okay.
Sounded kind of interesting.
Jeopardy.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was.
All right, looks like maybe we're just waiting for Peggy. Oh, there's Peggy. Cool. And Pat, you're there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for letting us take a little break there. So as I look back through the notes that I took on what you said your priorities are, I'm kind of feeling three main areas. Not everything quite fits neatly in that, and they all overlap a little bit. But I'm wondering if these three make sense for our discussion. One is community engagement. And so this is a pretty big bucket that has, the outreach to seniors and services to them, has our 18 to 30-year-olds, has those partnerships in it, building awareness, thinking of different ways that we can reach people. So community engagement seems like kind of a big area that we could talk about a little bit more. The second is this idea of being a community hub, and it's closely related, but I think it's unique in that it's kind of positioning the library a little bit differently in the community. It's kind of taking ownership of being that resource for community information. And not that the library is not already, but maybe in a more proactive way. I love what you were talking about related to like the loss of local media. I mean, certainly that's happening all over the country. And this is something, as I work in the philanthropy sector, that there's a lot of philanthropic dollars going into, building up local media in a lot of places. And I whenever I hear this, I'm always like, but what about the libraries? Because I think libraries could have a big role in, just like knowing what's going on and sharing that and being the place where, you could call and say like, what time's the fall festival or whatever. And the library would know or be able to figure out, find out that information. So it's not that, again, libraries aren't doing that, but it's maybe talking about it a little bit differently and kind of owning that in a different way. But it also involves partnerships. Obviously, it involves your meeting rooms and people meeting at the library, like promoting that very actively. You may not want to do that because you might be full up on that, but letting people know the library is a place where you can gather, co-promoting things, cross-promoting things. So I think talking more about what does it mean to be a community hub? Why would we want to do that? That could be interesting. And then the third area is, I just wrote down strong organization. And this is where, your fiscal responsibility / planning for the future, I think fits into this. I think that also layers on with like planning for future staffing needs in response to what the community is asking for. If your community is kind of growing and changing, what does that mean your staff needs to be able to respond to that? Not only in terms of dollars, but also in terms of just training. I think also within kind of this category is like, how do we update the perception of the library in the community? Some of that also ties in with, being that community hub, having that community engagement. So that's where it kind of crosses for me. But I think, in the bucket of strong organization is thinking about facilities and staff needs and that kind of thing. So I would love to know your thoughts if those three areas make sense for us to have a little bit deeper conversation. Community engagement as one, community being a community hub as number two, and what it means to be a strong organization as number three. Does that sound okay for now?
Sounds great to me.
Okay, Sue, what do you think? Is that okay? Oh, you're muted, Sue.
There we go. Me muted? Really?
Not the Sue we know and love.
No, that's right, Pat. I'd like maybe Amanda, I'm not really quite getting the picture on what you were thinking about when you're talking about strong organization. You started to elaborate on that, but could you give me a little clearer picture before we jump into these ideas?
Sure. It's a little more internally focused on making sure that you have the money that you need for the future, that you have plans for the money, how you're going to spend it, especially on facilities. I think you were the one that said like, hey, we renovated our building, but we need to make sure we're now planning for the future of that. That's really critical. But also some of the comments about, do we need to be open later? How do we accommodate for the needs of our community? What does that mean in terms of staffing? So it's really kind of looking internally on what do we need, basically money and staff wise, in order to be the library we want to be for our community in the future. But I also kind of layered into like updating the perception of the library a little bit. That might fall more into community engagement or being a community hub, but that's kind of where it fit in my mind. Again, these all kind of mesh together a little bit, but in thinking of how do we organize our conversation, it seems like that kind of internally focused, strong organization kind of fits.
Okay, thank you for that. Budgeting, working hours, staffing needs, and lipstick.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, making the community be more interested in what we're doing because we're more attractive to the community. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, and these are the three that I'm proposing that we just kind of spend some time talking about over the next 45 minutes to an hour. It doesn't mean that they'll be like the final things for the actual plan, because we need to talk about them and see what's kind of making sense to us. So everybody okay with these three for now? Okay, cool. So let me tell you how this is going to work. on your handouts on the next page, there's kind of a big empty grid that's got some questions across the top. Those are the questions I like to use to guide our discussion as we dig into each of these topics individually. So we're going to take these one by one, and we'll start with community engagement. We'll just start with, why is it important to engage the community? I know that's kind of a duh question. Of course, you want to engage the community, but I think it's important to talk about, like, what does that mean to you? Because community engagement means something different to everybody. Some of you have already talked about audiences that you hope to engage, but just in thinking about, like, why should we care about community engagement? Let's talk about that. Then the next question is, what is an outcome we're hoping to achieve in this area? So this is like kind of goal level, like you are the board, and while you've already given some really great ideas for very specific things you could do for different audiences or just different ideas, I want you to think about, well, what's our hope? Like, what does an engaged community look like when we're thinking about the library? So what's a possible goal? And then kind of get more into the, like, what do we hope to see happen? What are some of those ideas that we have? What do we as the board need to do to support some of those things moving forward? And then the last question, how do we know we're making a difference? And here I hope to go beyond, well, more people will use the library, because I hope that we can agree that that's what we want. And rather, I'd like to get more to how are people's lives different, or how are their perceptions changed? What does that mean for the library? Like, what are some of the stories they might tell? We obviously can't predict all of that, but again, what are we hoping for? What is the change that we're hoping to see in the community, and how would we know that that change actually happened? And so, we'll go through each of these questions for each of these three topics, and I'll kind of take some notes over here on the side, and we'll just kind of see where our conversation goes. So let's start with that community engagement. Why do you all think that community engagement is a focus for the library, should be a focus for the library over the next 3 to 5 years? Why is community engagement a priority? And I'll just open it to anybody who wants to talk.
I can say that community engagement is really important because this facility that we have occupies a large chunk of land in the community and is supported by tax dollars. And if the community does not feel like the community is being heard, or that the needs of the community are not being addressed, at least an effort being made to address them, then that creates dissension and unhappiness, and that's not desirable. Additionally, obviously, sorry, Kathleen, additionally, the reality of the matter is, what's the point? If we're not engaging the community, why don't we just close the doors and lock the doors, turn off the lights and go home? This is the whole point of the library, isn't it?
So then I'll sort of kind of tag on to that. For us to stay relevant, we have to be engaged in the community. And I think that our relevance is going to become more and more important as this community grows. I'm going to hazard a guess that it is going to continue to age. And so then our relevance becomes even more important in terms of the quality of life here in this town. If we're engaged in the community and relevant to the community, then the quality of life of the community, I think, improves as well, because we're hearing what the community needs, and we're trying to give them what they need, what they want. And that just makes us a better place to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Peggy, what would you add to that?
Well, I'm often struck by the fact that I run into people all the time that, first of all, have never been in the library, who've never had a library card, who question whether or not they want their tax dollars being spent on a library that they're not using. But the point is, they haven't been in, they don't know what we have, and how do we reach them to show them? An example would be, we have these cool little seating areas for privacy, to be able to sit down and read or use your computer or whatever in total privacy, scattered around the library. And I know people who would like to get out of the house and go somewhere, and gosh, come to the library, have a little peace and quiet, find something cool to read or do something. But we've not really reached very many people that way. Mm-hmm. I keep thinking about the library in Gold Beach does a wonderful job for their community, but their community is considerably smaller. And people know more about things when the community is smaller. if they don't have very many opportunities, the library is a big one. And we have other opportunities like the college, like the schools, that sort of thing. And so we're not in competition, but we do need to let people know what we have that they may not even know about.
Mhm. Yeah, Pat, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I see the bus from Seaview, which is our local big senior center, in front of the casino and Fred Meyer, and I don't think I've ever seen it in front of the library. So that would be one place that we need to. I used to deliver books there, that I had. Every time I finished using them, I'd take them there. But the person that was handling that is kind of dropped off. And maybe I need to knock on that door myself. But anything we can do to involve bigger groups, maybe we need to have people go before the Lions Club and the Rotary and different organizations and talk about the changes to the library and what's available. Because people that have volunteered to join those organizations and spend their time and efforts and money are people that can spread the library word on to others.
Pat, that's a great segue to talking about some of the possible goals. And so what I hear you saying is, partnerships is really critical, or partnerships are really critical because if we can figure out kind of who is connected in the community, who are influencers in the community, if you want to kind of use a social media term, and if we can get them to be fans or advocates for us, that helps the library spread the word in different ways than we are now already. And some of that might be like actually physically getting people to the library, like having the senior bus, come at certain times. Some of that might be the library going to places and showing what we offer or talking about what we offer. But I want to open it up to everybody. What are some possible goals? If we say community engagement is important, what does an engaged community look like? Like, what is it that we're striving towards, and would be our ideal, our goal for community engagement?
Well, one thing that I would like to see us get more involved in is civic responsibilities, if you will, like get out the vote processes, like teaching civics to people who maybe haven't had it in 40 years or don't have it now. Impressing upon our community how important it is as a small town where our voice and our vote matters a lot more to, become knowledgeable and become informed. And in my mind, there's a lot of things we can do to engage our community toward that particular outcome.
So Kathleen, I love that thought of that the library is kind of a facilitator of engagement on a broader sense.
Yeah.
Like you engage with the library, but you can learn from that how to be more plugged in wherever it is that you care about in the community. Okay, that's really cool. Thanks.
Well, I will add on to Kathleen's comment. This is what I was thinking when I was talking about this email. I didn't mention this. I have about 15 different things on this, twice a month email thing. And one of them was, hey, why don't we produce a not maybe a verbatim or maybe just a summary of what the Declaration is, the Declaration of Independence. How many people even know what that is anymore? And what about the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights? There's a lot of our communities that are uneducated in this area. So, how can you teach civics when they don't understand even what kind of a government we have? So I would coattail on your comment, Kathleen, about trying to educate people and maybe use this twice a month email or every 2-week email as a way to attach, to approach education from that end. So that was my add on to yours. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what else? What else is a goal in community engagement?
Well, I think one of the problems that I see a lot, and we haven't actually talked about this, Amanda, but one of the challenges, let's not say problems, people will have different words for this, but one of the challenges that many communities face, and our community is no exception, is how to appropriately help people who are not in a standard living arrangement. Let's call them the unhoused. Let's just call them that. I don't have any magic answers. I'm not sure that any of us have any magic answers to solve this problem, but I do know the impact that they have at our local library does affect our patrons. I get a lot of feedback from parents who are concerned about having their children in the library because they can't watch 4 children at the same time, kind of a problem. And we've talked about this a lot at board meetings, and so I don't really want to get into too big detail of this, but this is a challenge for us, and I would like to kind of put our heads together a little bit and see if we can come up with some better ideas. On the same token with this is how do we make the environment not only safe from a physical standpoint, but from a emotional standpoint for the children that come in. And this is an unpopular topic, and we're not going to spend any time talking about this, but there are volumes in our children's sections that disturb a lot of parents. And so how do we make this a safe environment so that the parents want to bring their children to the library? So that's part of this the unsafe issue. How do we address this? This, I think, is like the big elephant in the room for not just our library, but for a lot of community organizations too. So I would say that would be, to identify what kind of unified approach we can have to helping all of our residents and unhoused residents, if you will, how to help all of them so that everybody feels safe, because not everybody does feel safe, and when they don't feel safe in the library, they don't come.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Peggy, what would you add as goals for community engagement?
Well, one of the things I was thinking as I was listening to Sue is that we do help the unhoused in many ways by providing them with computer access and internet access outside the building, that they can sit outside and be able to connect. Things that help people find out where there are jobs listed, where they might be able to apply, where community resources are. So I think that's an important job that we do as well. So there's got to be a line. We've got to figure out where we can do both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I also was thinking that it's possible that we could use volunteers more to create some programming that might bring people in on important topics. For example, if we had someone who could round up people who would like to come in and give talks about the Constitution, about their last trip. We had a great presentation at a meeting I was at about a trip to Patagonia, of all places. There are people out there who would do things like that, but we don't have the staffing that can do everything. But perhaps we could make use of volunteers to be a coordinator, to see if we could bring people of diverse interests in to have something interesting to do. Maybe a movie night once a month. And we've done some things like this in the past, but maybe more frequently.
I know that the Gold Beach Library has a big outdoor screen, and they were showing movies at night in the summer, like a drive-in theater. I have no idea what that screen cost, Jeremy, but it was a cool concept, and just another way to get the community.
I'm going to chime in just to say it's so hard for me not to chime in and let you know everything that we are doing, because you guys are saying things and we are already doing them. Not all of them, but that's not the point. So I'm biting my tongue. And the screen, we actually were looking into getting a screen for Chetco before Curry did. They're not cheap, but there would have been grants. But our traffic noise is too much.
That makes sense, because they're way up there tucked in the corner and there's
Exactly,
no traffic up there. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, maybe we could sponsor it at Azalea Park.
I did contact the city about that one time and it never went anywhere, but it's been about 5 years. So, but anyway, yeah.
No, Julie, you should absolutely chime in if you've got things to add like that. That's really helpful.
Okay.
Okay, these are great possible goals. And some of what I'm hearing is we need to be mindful of all of the needs of the different populations that we serve, right? And we need to think creatively about how we can respond. Like if we get feedback, which, you know, we have some of that feedback in our learning report, that some things are not working for some people, then we need to engage in further conversations about how can we make it so that people feel, you know, safe, comfortable, welcome, all of those things in the library. And some of that is through just education, some of that's through partnerships, some of that's through maybe potentially having people share their expertise or their experiences at the library. Yeah, other ways that we might work towards some of these goals that you've talked about. Any other ideas?
Well, one
So
idea
this,
that
go
one
ahead,
idea
Peggy.
that we're already doing is that staff came up with a creative idea of having a book club that takes place at a local brewery. And that was great creative thinking. So maybe we need to stretch our minds a little more and come up with some more.
So this could sound really off the wall, but of the unhoused population in this community, there are actually some people who are very, they have very interesting backgrounds and could teach us a thing or two. And I know from experience that when you give a person a sense of dignity and a reason to be proud of who they are, they will in turn take much better care of that place that they're in. And so my point is, say there's a gentleman who's currently unhoused who plays a real killer guitar. So perhaps he comes to the library and he does a workshop on how to play guitar or how to, you know, put songs together or a sing-along or, I mean, something that connects the unhoused population with some of our patrons in a way that's not threatening and that's educational or enlightening or enjoyable and gives everybody a chance to connect on a personal level. And I'm not saying it works with all of the unhoused population, but it could be a way to soften the perception right now in this community that our unhoused population is dangerous and scary and needs to be shunted aside. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying at all, Sue, but I know that's the perception in town. And to some extent, there are some people who, yeah, I get why folks are concerned about them. But there are a lot more that are just a little dirty or just, you know, haven't had a chance to take a shower in 3 days because they live in their car. You know, to give them that, to give them permission to show who they are in a safe and responsible way could make a big difference. And that's just an off the wall, off the top of my head thought, but you know, that would be one thing I could see us maybe doing to achieve the goal of making people feel safer at the library and serving the unhoused population at the same time.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Kathleen, that when you provide a person a measure of dignity, that a lot of things do change because we are human beings and we do want to be respected. Our challenge, of course, is that we need to be really careful because, and this is not about the unhoused, that's not what this thing is about,
Right.
but tonight. But I will say that there are a number of people that are unhoused that are not mentally well. And so this is a problem because if we're going to have them have interactions with people in the library, we have to be very aware that we might be opening a door for a problem.
Yeah.
So
Could be that we get somebody like Core Response involved in helping us vet people or something like that. I mean, again, off the top of my head.
Something
yeah.
like, I'm not saying the idea is a bad idea because I don't think it's a bad idea because it is true. When you give a person a certain amount of respect, they will often reciprocate and respond very well to that. And sometimes that can be the difference that helps people to make the change and to pivot. And it can make a big difference, but we do need to be careful that we do protect, particularly our children.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing you talk about is how do we, through community engagement, help people see the humanity in each other, regardless of what their position is in life and where they're at with life stage. I mean, in our survey, we did ask, like, what characteristics define you as a person? Do you have children in your house? Are you employed full time? Do you speak other languages in your house? That sort of thing, so that we could kind of understand a little bit more, not just demographically where people are, but what are things they're experiencing, so that we can, again, hear that, understand that, and then think of ways to not just connect with them like in a one-way situation, but in a two-way situation. So I'm hearing you talk about that, like how do we better maybe respond to the feedback that we're getting from all of our different patrons.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't want me to monopolize, but there's another
please.
program that I'm familiar with, and I don't know if they still do it, but it's through Oregon Humanities. And they used to have these conversations, community conversations, and people would come to town. They were vetted by Oregon Humanities, and they would come to town and they would share a topic, usually a hot button topic, and get all these diverse opinions and perceptions. And it was amazing how when you finished the conversation, you left that room with an appreciation of what somebody else sees it in a way that you never thought of. I can't, there was a name for it.
That's it. Community conversations.
Okay, there you go.
We host them a few times a year.
Okay, good. I didn't know we still did. That's terrible, isn't it, that I said that?
It's okay. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, so yeah.
Totally.
Well, and to that end, Julie, I'll point out that you mentioned that you are aware of a lot of the things that are being talked about that you believe we're implementing, but the fact that we all three can sit here and not know anything about it is a pretty telling reality that we don't even know what we're doing.
How would you like me to make sure that you know what we're doing? It's on the calendar. It's on the
No,
newsletter.
that's on us. That's on us, Julie, I think.
Thank you.
But yeah, yeah. Maybe there are more things the library can do to get the word out. I don't know. You're doing an awful lot. But it is telling, Sue's right, that we don't even know. And I'm blaming myself because I should know these things and I don't.
I think that's pretty common. I don't think it's something you should beat yourself up about. I hear this a lot because there is a lot going on and people have other things in their lives as well. I mean, even the staff, I think, learned from each other, just in different areas that they're working in. But I think that also helps us kind of see, like, what are the challenges? Like, when thinking about, like, what is a goal, it can't be like everyone knows everything that's going on, because that's just not realistic. It might be seniors know about, specific programs that might, benefit them. I love what Pat talked about. Like, I'm telling everybody about audiobooks, that I run into. Like, that's a very specific message that you could really focus in on. How do we get the message about audiobooks to our seniors? So again, thinking about, like, okay, our goal could be increased awareness, right? Very broadly. But our tactics could be for this audience, like, this is the message we really want to, hammer home over the next year or couple of years. Okay, so if we work more towards increased community engagement, like, how will we know people are engaged? Obviously, more people coming to the library, using the meeting room, that sort of thing. But what difference does it make in people's lives if they're more engaged with the library? What would you say?
Oh, that's a tough one. Peggy wants to answer that question.
No, it just made me think. You're right. How do we know?
Right.
Well, and a lot of the times when nonprofits ask this question, it's usually data driven. And so it's like, oh, we'll send out a survey and somebody will answer it, and that's how we'll know. And I hate that because it just is so impersonal and it's so cold. I don't know how to answer the question either. Let somebody else start and I'll think a little more about.
Kathleen, I actually think you have answered the question, because I think you were the one that said, when I asked, why is community engagement important? I think you talked about quality of life. And I think that that's a potential measure. And you might say, like, well, how would we know that someone's quality of life is different? I mean, we can literally ask them, right? Like we could have focus groups, we could have interviews, we could say, how has the library influenced your quality of life? And they might be able to say like, well, I have access to things, or I, feel more empowered, or I have a sense of dignity because I'm welcomed here, or, whatever. So, I mean, that sounds very kind of soft. Oh, quality of life is different, but that is just as valid of data as someone, checking a box about something.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you've already said that I think is a measure of
Okay, I'll take
success.
that.
Yeah, there you go. What else would you say? So quality of life is one measure of change and what's changed in people's lives.
Well, and I don't know how you would measure it, but getting back to the civics that we talked about, helping people become better informed participants in this country. I guess you could find a way to measure whether or not they are more informed. Like the next election comes around, and instead of a whole lot of misinformation swirling around Facebook, we actually have a community of people who are well informed, who have already looked at the pro and con, who are talking to each other civilly and knowledgeably, who are, seeing the nuances. I mean, I don't know how you would measure all that, but less anger on Facebook. I don't know.
No, I mean, again, the way we measure it is we ask people, right? We
Yeah.
have interviews with them, we talk with them, we
Yeah.
make observation is valid data too. Sorry, go ahead, Sue.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, there's some concrete measures of people's happiness. A concrete measure of that is the police blotter.
There you go.
As a concrete measure, if you see crime going down, you can figure that part of that is because they are happier in their own skin. And that would be a measure. That would not be necessarily a conclusive or final measure of the effectiveness of the library's programs, but I would think that you could feel good about seeing that happen.
Yeah, there's not always a straight line, right? I'm more engaged, therefore crime is less, right? But I think there are indicators that you could say like, well, this is something we're going to watch, or we're going to just kind of track, like, what's the tone of what we're seeing in the community? And again, you might not be able to conclusively like, well, the library did this and the tone is now this, so that's good. But I think that's part of kind of being a responsive organization and listening and responding. Any other measures that you might see if the community is more engaged?
Well, I make a lot less money. I've been selling real estate here for 25 years, and I used to get a lot more people in the office, usually women, who said, I want to move because I have no social life here. I don't know anybody. I don't have any friends. And getting that to change by saying, gee, I'm taking bridge lessons. Would you like to come with me? Or how about us going here or going there? Or can I introduce you to the guys that are playing pinochle? Or, silly things sometime. And all it takes is having somebody meet one or two people that they think they can be friends with. And suddenly I've lost a sale. And I'm happy about it.
Yeah, Pat, I think that's great. If people want to stay, they feel connected to the community, to each other. I think that's a great measure of engagement. That's awesome. Okay, I want to wrap community engagement. Are there things you haven't talked about that you want to add to this part before we move on to this community hub idea? Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
I would just say as a last wrap up to that conversation, if you see more people in the library, I think that would be a pretty good indication that they're finding value in the library. And so, maybe there's things that we can do that make people more comfortable, whether it's addressing the unhoused concerns, or whether it's offering more programs, or whether putting on a trial basis, tagging books that parents are uncomfortable with. There's all kinds of things that we could do to modify the environment on a small level to see whether there's more engagement, because that's really what you're talking about, engagement.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about people in the building. We're talking about people using the services, because that's one way we can be more engaged in the community, is we can suddenly get huge brainstorms about how we can reach people at home in different ways than we are now. And so I'm not insinuating, Julie, we're not doing that. I'm just saying, maybe we could come up with some new ideas.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I'm not offended by, I'm listening and taking notes. Yeah, you're good. I'm not offended.
Okay, I didn't want to be thrown out of
No.
the library.
You're fine.
Okay, let's put community engagement aside for a moment and kind of turn our attention to this idea of the library being a community hub. And again, the library serves in that way already. It's a place where a lot of people meet and find things. But I heard you all talking about maybe being a hub in a different way, being more proactive about that. And why would that be something that's important for the library to do? So why is it important for the library to be a community hub?
Because the
Well-
community needs it.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's what I was just gonna say, because there is nothing right now. There is
Yeah.
no central place in this town where somebody can find out what they need to know. And
Yeah.
we are a neutral party in my mind. We're not the
Mhm.
city, we're not the county, we're not this, we're not that. We're all about knowledge and information.
Politically neutral,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Yeah,
And furthermore,
I come from a community college background, and I've always had this goal that the reason there's community in community college, just like there's community in our library name, is because that's what we are supposed to be. We're supposed to be what the community needs. And I'm a strong believer that we provide what we can to help the community feel more at home, not just in the library, but in the community.
totally agree. When we first moved here 25 years ago, I had to rely upon my sister-in-law, who'd been here for a year earlier, to tell me when soccer signups were for the kids, because it just simply was not published anywhere that I could find. And so it's been a missing component of our community for a while. Our local paper provided that to a small degree for a while there. But since that's evaporated, we really don't have a one-stop location for community activities. And that is something that I think is really important and could be a big service and contribute to community engagement as well as satisfaction.
yeah.
Let me chime in just for a minute, just to let you guys know that I actually have a meeting scheduled later this week with a vendor about creating a community calendar rather than just a library calendar. So I've been working on this for a while.
Fabulous.
That's
Wonderful.
great.
Good.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
wonderful.
That's a hard job, Julie.
I
As
know,
a-
I've heard and I've talked to the chamber and I've been digging into it and trying to make it work. And so I'm just scheduling meetings right now to see what services or products are
Fabulous.
offered to do that.
Yeah, and if there were a way to put a link to it on the library's page, a big banner says community calendar, check here. I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
Mhm.
That's what it would be. Yeah, it would be community calendar on our website. That's the goal.
Cool. Okay. So I put that under the well, how would we do this? But I want to talk a little bit more about goals. And Sue, I think you were the one who said kind of there wasn't that one-stop place where I could kind of find out what's going on in the community, how do I plug in? So is that a goal? Is it the goal that people say oh, you need to know about that? And we'll talk to the library. Kind of no matter what it's about, that people would go to the library. So that's a goal. Are there other goals when you think about being the hub? And 5 years from now, what does that look like? What does that mean for the community? Anything else come to mind?
Well, that means keeping up with what the community wants 5 years from now.
Yeah.
That means we all have to be very, very open to changes and not just do things the way we've always done them. Well, what else should we be doing?
Yeah.
So one thing I wrote down here with a question mark was, I wonder if one possible goal could be to support or encourage or even set up a series of, town halls that addresses whatever's coming down the pike to this community, whether it's efforts to mine the headwaters of the Illinois River, or it's efforts to put in wind turbines off the coast, or it's talk about the next wildfire and are we ready? That kind of thing. I realize a lot of that is perhaps the city's purview, but maybe maybe they could use some help, or maybe we could offer our space, or, I don't know. That it would just seem to me that we could become more than just the place where folks go to find out what's going on in the community, but also the place that folks come to when there's a potential problem or issue that they want to make sure they have all the information they need, and they would come to the library. And yeah, that might be beyond our ability. I don't know. Or
I mean, we're
wonder.
talking goals, right? So they can be
Exactly.
aspirational.
I'm
And-
dreaming. I'm dreaming big.
Yeah, that's what this is all about. I mean, a little bit of what I hear you talking about, Kathleen, is like, how do we then partner with those other community stakeholders and maybe even convene them? Like, how do we,
Yeah.
the library, be proactive about reaching out, or maybe having like quarterly or twice a year meetings to like what's coming up for everybody? And I don't know, Julie, if this already kind of happens in town or not, but it is a position the library can take to be the group that says, all right, we all are kind of trying to better the community in our own way, but no one's bringing all of us together to kind of coordinate that. And, you know, that doesn't have to be a huge burden for the library. It can literally just be like, hey, we're having a meeting. Anybody who, you know, wants to come talk about what they're up to, like, show up, and we're just going to go around the room and everybody's going to kind of talk about their thing. And then the library has the opportunity to say, we have this community calendar where you can, you know, post this or whatever. So again, it's being maybe proactive about bringing together stakeholders to position the library as that hub. And yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I missed the very beginning of that, but I know there is already a monthly meeting of community service oriented people that get together and share everything that's going on in their different agencies. And most of the time, someone from the library does attend that.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
Do
And
they,
so-
though, share that information to the public?
They push it out to everyone who attends, and like every agency is having the same issues as us. All
Yep.
of this stuff is being pushed out to the public, but that doesn't
Yep.
mean that people are consuming what's being pushed out. We
Gotcha.
can't force them to
Yeah.
read and listen to things, you know?
Yeah.
Right, and to the extent that we would want to include something like that on the calendar, we don't take a position because we're not in the position of telling people what to think and what to believe. But we can say there is a meeting of this, and if you're interested, contact
Right.
and go that route and keep it short and sweet.
We
So-
could also perhaps be the repository for whatever kind of product comes out of meetings like that. If it's reports or statistics or whatever, we could also be that, maybe. And then
And
that'd be,
Yeah, and also our elected representatives really are who should be
Yeah.
running the meetings and providing this information.
mhm.
Yeah, good point.
And we frequently try to get people to come to do that,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
people are
Yeah.
busy, you
Yeah.
know, or they're doing it in their own spaces because
Mhm.
it's promoting, you know, the city
Mhm.
hall.
Mhm.
And
Whatever.
again, we get back to the inability sometimes to find out when these things happen. I wanted to go to the League of Women Voters introduction of the candidates, but I'm not on Facebook all the time, and I didn't know when it was.
Yeah, and it was at the library, and
Mhm.
it was on our events calendar,
Yep, it
and
was
you
Wednesday
know,
night.
Okay, Julie, I'll look at the calendar.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying I get it because I don't know everything that's going on in the community either. Because there are so many different places, which is
Mhm.
why it's important to try to bring it together.
Mhm.
If a calendar were created, which you're working on, Julie, that would be a searchable calendar, then Peggy could just go type in league and pull up all the bits with league, and then she wouldn't have to wonder, she wouldn't have to say, okay, Monday, nope, not on Monday, not on Tuesday. You know, she wouldn't have to manually search the calendar with computer
Correct,
search.
but our current calendar has a search function as well.
Does it? Okay.
Okay, so I've taken lots of notes about your goals and how to position yourself as a community hub. Sounds like some things are already in the works, which are awesome. And then I've taken a lot of notes on like, well, how do we get towards this? Sounds like I love that Julie's already looking into a community calendar to kind of be that, you know, hosting place for this community information. I love the idea of being kind of that repository to connect people to information, helping people find reports. That kind of thing. Sounds like the library is already plugged into the monthly meeting. So that's awesome. other things you want to add around goals or how you might work towards those goals of being a community hub that we haven't mentioned?
You know, one thing we do a nice job of is local history. And I don't know any place that has something as wonderful as the samurai sword that was donated after World War II, and the submarine model that we have and all that. And I think one way to maybe draw more people in is to not necessarily enhance our collection of local knowledge, local history, but to make it more widely known that we have it, because it's amazing people that don't know we have it.
So,
Right. That's my email comment. This week, we're going to talk about this group, you know, and of course it has to be done right. And that only reaches the email people and it doesn't reach everybody. But at the same time, if it reaches me, then I might say to Dave, hey, Dave, did you hear about this? You know, and then word of mouth can travel too.
Mm-hmm.
so
And
I
that's where it also
wonder,
crosses engagement too, right?
right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kathleen.
so I wonder, just brought to mind a crazy thought. I wonder if there's a grant out there that we could get and then we could create some audio videos, little shorts that we could have computers dedicated to running those little shorts, and we could do the history of the Talawa and the history of logging and the history of fishing and just stuff. And you'd have to come to the library to plug into that. And I mean, I don't know. And it'd be an audio visual thing.
Interesting. Maybe a little email to whet their appetite.
Yeah, like a museum would do, you know, only we could be the museum. That would cost money. It would probably mean more staff.
Partnership with the high school,
Right.
they have a
There you go.
class teaching kids how to do audio video stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll bet
Yeah,
SWAC
I would
be.
say it's a, it's a balancing act. That would be super cool, but
Mhm.
there's production costs
Yep.
with that, doing something that's quality enough that we would want.
Yep.
But that would be super cool. And I'm sure there would be grants out there. We did pursue a oral history project
Mm.
a few years ago, and then COVID hit and it got derailed, but it was more like a database of interviewing local
Oh,
residents.
I would
everything.
love to see that actually
Mm-hmm.
start
Um,
back up.
But
A lot of things get on the radar, but with a staff who all do multiple jobs,
Yes.
it's very
Yes.
difficult to expand into those
Mhm.
many things. But that's why we do this process in my mind, is so we can identify which ones are most important. So
Mhm.
Yeah. Pat, were you going to add something?
You know, actually, I'm fading into the sunset. I've had a very long day, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to quit now. I'm happy that I took part in this, but I'm slowly recovering from an entire month of hospitalization. And this is as good as I'm going to get for tonight.
Well, we
So-
understand. Please
So
take care of
thank all
yourself.
of you, and it's really interesting. And so when you get everybody's opinion and you've gotten a good feel for what we need to do, then what are you going to do with it?
Yep, I'm gonna talk with Julie and Kat and create an outline for the plan, and then we'll bring that back to the board to review. So you'll get the chance to look at that over and talk about it a little bit more. I think we've got that scheduled for the November board meeting. Is that right, Julie? I don't have the date in front of me.
Well, I'll be at the November one looking for it, even if it doesn't show up.
Okay,
I
I'm
don't
going to look
remember. Mm-mm.
at November 19th board meeting.
Yeah, third Tuesday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So
We're-
at that meeting, I'll be back on the Zoom with all of you to kind of go over where we're at with the draft plan.
Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate you
Okay.
being here.
Take care, Pat.
I am slowly start.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So back to Community Hub. So how do we know we're making a difference? I love, Sue, what you said about word of mouth. I think that's really important. I think that's a question you can ask. Like, do you share information that you learn about the library? What else? Like, how, if the library becomes a community hub and is like recognized as a community hub, how does that change people's lives, how they feel about the library? How does it change the library too? Anybody have any thoughts about that?
Well, in my mind, it would change the life of the community because the frustration level would drop because you wouldn't have to be hunting for information you were looking for. I would also hazard that other entities, other groups, events and the like would increase in participation. You know, we'd have more people at the local play and we'd have more people going to the concerts and because they would know. So there's that. It would probably make us a lot busier too, and that could be a bad thing in some ways. So
It crossed my mind. I have no idea how this would ever work, but back in the day when the pilot was what it used to be when it was award winning, there were lots of little articles by Joe Blow. There was even a column, I think it was the Pistol River News that got in there, you know, like so-and-so saw a cougar in his cow field or whatever, you know. And it would be really cool if we could figure out some way to post local little articles about events in advance so that people would know what they were, not just this is going to happen here. But that's a brainstorm and it's certainly not complete.
But again, that's an opportunity to partner with maybe the high school and or the college. Maybe there's like a journalism class that, you know, the kids could learn how to do interviews by going and talking to somebody about Joe Blow's cow out there in the middle of the pasture and the cougar. Yeah, I remember those columns. That was a fabulous paper back in the day.
And of course, that was the post version. I think what Peggy is saying is it'd be nice if we could have a version. So we
Sure.
can say, hey, coming up next Tuesday, this is what we're going to talk about. Wouldn't it be great to come? Or if you're interested, show up, RSVP, or click this link for more information or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, I'm wondering if one of the results of being in the community hub and kind of just increasing this buzz about the community and being the place where people go to learn about these things, if it helps people not only be connected in the community, because I think we've talked about that, but also feel like pride in the community, like proud that they're a community member there, that they, you know, are informed, that they can participate. I know that's also a hard thing to measure, but that's a question that you can ask, and it is kind of a quality of life question too.
Well, and since this is a tourist town, that would be easy to measure, I think, because all we have to do is have Travel Oregon or ACVA send out a survey to the visitors to our area and ask them, you know, did you get the information you needed from the local whatever? And if people know what's going on and they're able to tell visitors this is what's going on, then yeah, there's a sense of pride in that, I think.
Okay, cool. Anything else on Community Hub before we go to our last topic? That was a good conversation. Okay, the last area is I wrote strong organization. We can kind of, our strong library. What did I say?
Strong organization.
Strong organization. And we'll define this how we think is appropriate. I want to pause though, because I didn't tell you what the staff talked about, and they did the same process as you, right? Like we started with the learning report. I gave them kind of an overview. They were in small groups, and so they talked amongst themselves. Somebody took notes, and then they did a little exercise where they came up with what do they think the priorities should be, just like you all did. And then I kind of combined those a little bit, and they spent more time digging into these. And their three areas are very, very close to what you all came up with, which I think is really cool. They definitely talked a lot about community engagement. What could they do? Very tactical. You know, they didn't talk so much about goals as like, what are we doing already to engage the community? What else could we do? So really sharing ideas. The second area they talked about, I called it community support. And I think it's very similar to what you're talking about with being a hub. They didn't quite use that language, but it was more around like, how do we get people to like understand what we do and the value of what we do, change perceptions about what we do, be more engaged like with each other. So it was kind of a subset, I guess, of community engagement. And then the third is what you're getting ready to talk about. We called it organizational development, and it was a lot about like training and onboarding, professional development, like how do I feel empowered as a staff member? So kind of thinking from a staff member perspective, what would make the library even better a place to work, and things that they needed going forward. So very, very similar conversation that the staff had, which is cool because sometimes the board, and I know, this section, you might talk more about money than they did. Like that's not something that staff is thinking about, on a very regular basis, maybe besides Julie. They were more focused on kind of like themselves personally in their own development. But the other pieces of their conversation were very close. So that's interesting. So let's talk about strong organization. I can spell. Why do you all think it's important for the library to be a strong organization?
Well, so Sue alluded to the concern of some people in our community that their tax dollars aren't necessarily being what's the word I want? Not spent properly, but aren't being protected. No, what's the word I want, Sue?
Utilized properly.
Yeah, utilized. There you go. And so a strong organization and and we're completely transparent at every meeting, but if there was a way to improve upon that perception that yes, your tax dollars are being utilized in a way that benefits the community as a whole, then perhaps some of that concern could be alleviated.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting, Kathleen, just to chime in real quick, because there are a fair amount of studies, and it varies from community to community, that show what the return on investment is for library dollars. And so, like I was reading one the other day that was in Pennsylvania, and it was for every dollar spent, the economic return on investment for that community was about $5.50. And so it's not just about people who use the library. Libraries benefit communities.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So we just need to find a way to capitalize on that that fact, and in a way that helps our own community understand that maybe. And I don't know, Sue is the one. I mean, this is your area, Sue. I'm no dollars person. I mean, I understand math, but I don't dig deep like you do.
Yeah, so I mean, we've already been over this, and I'm not going to waste any of your time reviewing this. I just wanted to point out that because we have spent a fair chunk of change updating the library, in another 20 years, we're going to have to spend it all over again, or 25 or maybe 30 years. We're going to have to spend it all over again. And when the public doesn't see us being good shepherds of that money, it creates problems as far as whether they are going to be asked to pony up more money, which they can't. We cannot do that because of the restrictions that we have on it. So do we put up with failing infrastructure because we did not properly husband? That's the term. We did not husband the resources correctly. Sorry if that offends you, but that's the term.
No, that's the word I was looking for, actually.
Yeah. So the point simply is I think, to me, that feels like that's a high priority, and I'm glad to hear Julie is working on it. I sure would like to know when we can expect that report that shows how what the capital replacement program will be, because it needs to be in the next budget. It should have been in this past budget in the 5 years before this, but it wasn't. But we can't do anything about yesterday, but we can certainly do something about tomorrow.
Well, obviously we've had our disagreements about this point, and I know it's an important document, which is why I introduced to the board that I was working on it. And since you have expressed your need for wanting this done sooner rather than later, I have engaged HGE to work on it. So they are currently working on it.
Good. Let's get this figured out, because it's not going to be pretty when the day comes. And then we have other things like that. I know that I've received comments from other public persons who have come in and said, oh gosh, you redid the library, but what about those bathrooms. Those countertops are falling off the wall. That's their interpretation.
And we did discuss that. We did discuss that before we did the renovation. So these are all conversations. I do disagree that we are putting ourselves in a bad financial position. There are plans. It's just not in the document format that you have requested, which we are working on.
Well, I'll be very interested to see what the plans are, because right now I don't see any plans, and I don't really want to turn this into a discussion about this because that's not the point of this evening's activities. But to me, that's a high priority, and Kathleen brought that up. So strong organization is showing that we have our ducks in a row. You know, that we're
Yeah.
that we're ahead and that we're making good decisions for what's coming up down the line as best we can tell. You know, I don't know, ladies, and maybe or maybe in 3 years we're not even going to do this anymore. Maybe what we're going to do is do this, and we're going to activate this brain implant. I have no idea what the future holds. Everything is up for grabs. We have no idea what's going to happen, but we have to make some reasonable attempt to look like we are a strong organization, like we've got our ducks in a row, like we have planned as best we can.
I just want to, I understand that. I agree completely, but we are supremely transparent and we have clean audits and all of our budget documents are aligned. So I understand what you're saying, but I think that the library is known by and large in this community for being very organized and dealing with their money well. So I get it, but.
Thank you, Julie. And I will look forward to solidifying our position even more by being transparent about how we're going to replace billing infrastructure. So that's very good. I'm glad to hear that this is in process, and I look forward to hearing what comes of this process. So we were talking about budget, but we were also talking about the staffing needs and the working hours and could open more hours, and how do we look more responsible to the community at large. With respect to hours, I looked it up again because I wasn't really clear, and we are never open before 10 o'clock. There's interest in the survey that said, hey, how about 9 a.m.? You know, I realize that's more staffing hours, or it's going to require a little more creative staffing juggle. And it's hard because, you know, you've got to cover lunch hours. And so that means you have to have a person there so somebody else can be gone. So I don't have a real good answer. I'm not a staffing pro. But as far as people being able to access the library's resources, I don't think we want to be open on Sundays. I know there was somebody who suggested that. I don't think that, I don't feel a strong need to do that myself. But, you know, closing at, is it 5 on Saturday?
We are open Monday through Thursday, 10 to 7, and Friday and Saturday, 10 to 5, which was a change decided upon by the board.
It
And we did
is.
have a lengthy discussion about increasing hours and did some math, and it was not doable at the time.
Yeah, no, I know, but I think it would be worth it to revisit that idea. But I did have a question. Somebody said something about meeting rooms open till 9 o'clock. Can anybody offer any clarification about what that comment was about? Maybe Amanda knows what that comment is about. It was in general comments.
Yeah, I think some people just would like to see the meeting rooms open later so that more meetings could be held in the meeting room. So it was one of those, you know, in a perfect world, this is what I want.
Well, that's actually the access control project that we're working on now with HGE is swipe card access so that the lobby meeting rooms can be used after staff hours.
Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm really glad to hear you're working on that.
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing that libraries have a way for people to use the room, even if there's not staff there, because it's a low cost way to increase your services. I just want to comment here for a second that I feel like you've got some really strong goals here that are, you know, reasonable for a lot of libraries. Like, how do we ensure that we're meeting community needs, not only now, but in the future, through our staff, through our facilities? So how do we do that? Well, we ensure that we have a capital replacement plan. We ensure that we have a plan to fund that. The last library I worked in had the plan but didn't fund it, and I can attest to the mess that left them in and their city in. So I know how important like that dual track is, to know what we need to do, but then to also make sure that we're, you know, regularly putting the money aside to make that happen. I'm hearing you talk about, you know, we need to ensure that we have the staff to meet what those needs might be, and that means being proactive about what those needs are. We talked about that in community engagement and being a community hub. Revisiting expanded hours. There's some libraries that I work with that on an annual basis have a conversation about our hours still meeting our needs, and maybe do a little survey, at the checkout desk or whatever, to see if there is kind of a groundswell for, something a little different. It sounds like your hours are pretty good through the week, but maybe, a Friday or Saturday might need a little conversation there. Although, again, dependent on what resources are and how you're able to staff those as well, what those priorities are. When you think about other things that would make you a strong organization, what else comes to mind?
Well, so I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question right, but here's what my thoughts are. Our property taxes are only, what, 3.9%, 0.039%. Anyway, that on my property taxes, that works out to about $20 a year. And that's the cost of a lunch out. And so if we can, for us to look like and be a strong organization, I think there is a perception problem as well that maybe can be addressed in this particular section. Maybe that's more under community engagement. But my point is, when you start looking at it from the perspective of we're only asking you to spend $20 a year for a facility and a set of programs and a entity that is giving this much to the community, that's turning that dollar into, $5 over and above, per dollar or whatever. I'm not saying this well, but I know what I'm trying to say. I think that belongs in this area. The stronger, the better we can show the benefit of our library and how strong of an organization we are using people's tax dollars in the way we do, then I think that that's an important goal to focus on for the next 3 years, because people need to, I'm not sure that everybody understands how valuable their tax dollars are when it comes to this library, and how little they pay, in my mind, in return for what they can actually get out of it. And I realize not everybody who pays the taxes uses the library, but in my mind, that's beside the point. I believe in the community benefiting, paying for the benefit of the whole. And that's just, yeah.
It gets further confused by the amount of people that use our library that are renters, and they don't understand that they actually are paying property taxes through their rent. And when their rent goes up, maybe it's not going to be because of us, because our taxes don't go up except by as allowed by law. And so I think there's a lot of people out there that do not understand like how much they're putting into the library, what they're getting out of it.
Well, it's the same argument that some elder people will make about schools, about funding schools. I don't have kids in the school. Why should I pay for it? And I've never understood that argument either. And so I guess what I'm saying is our library is sometimes perceived in that same vein of thought, where if I don't use it, why am I paying for it? And I just think that under strong organization, there might be a way that we can strengthen our position when it comes to our taxpayers and what their money is paying for, and how the value of it, and how we need every dollar, because we can't do all the things we need to do and want to do and should do without every dollar. And
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Kathleen, that it's important that people understand what their money is bringing to them. I will point out that people's actual out-of-pocket varies widely based on the assessed value of the property.
I know.
Widely. And I know people who are paying $200 a year and then considerably less. And so people have differing understanding of whether the value is there for them or not. If they're unhappy with their library because they don't feel their library is responsive to them, then they feel more inclined to not be happy and maybe to seek redress.
Yeah, I know there's a movement afoot in the country that's addressing this very issue, that people are starting to complain about how their taxes are being spent, and wanting to opt out certain things that they don't think are worth their money. And I guess in my mind, for us to be a strong organization, we need to somehow address the perception that is, are your property taxes, are they valuable to the library? Are we spending them wisely for the community? And give, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but there's a perception that we need to address, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I do want to chime in just a
Yeah.
little bit, just to say, yes, there is a perception. I am absolutely all supportive of this conversation, how to change that perception.
Mhm.
But that perception is primarily a small group of people in my
Mhm.
mind who are dissatisfied about the way that we've handled the collection.
Mhm.
And so that has led to them feeling like they have not been listened to, that we aren't doing what they want us to do with their tax dollars because they disagree with what we're doing with their tax dollars.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to say that that is probably, no, I don't want to say probably. I'm trying to soften it, but I won't. It won't change. We are legally obligated to do certain things, and freedom to read is important. And if the people who think that that has to be changed in order for the library to be valuable for them, I don't know that we can change that perception, because that's not going to change. That
Mhm.
they won't change their mind probably unless we do what they are requesting, which we can't do.
Yeah.
So perhaps then the way I should word this is, we can go a long ways toward making sure that the majority of the people in our taxing district can understand the value of their tax dollars. And I realize there is a small minority that we will likely never change their minds, but perhaps we still should at least make sure that the majority of the taxpayers can see the value of what
Absolutely.
it is they're spending.
Yeah, that's important for any
yeah.
local government. And even if we weren't a local government, that's very important for libraries.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think
And
that's,
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I just pulled out my taxes for last year. It's 0.425, and my bill for the library is $110. So I was off by quite a bit. My bad. But I still don't think that's a very much money for what the library gives me.
Kathleen, I think you were thinking of that $10 because we had a conversation about cutting, levying less than
Yes,
our
yes, yes, you're right.
tax
You're right.
rate. And the average that it would save each homeowner is $10 a year.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Right.
Thank you. Mhm.
I just wanted to say that this is a little bit more complicated in Curry County because the people are very confused. Back in the day when timber was at record levels, there was so much money in this county that the county didn't know how to spend it all, literally.
Mhm.
And as the timber industry went downhill, the county could no longer fund things like they used to. And so all of these little special districts jumped up, and the library is one of them. Back in the 90s, the library put on, or the folks that were interested started a campaign to form a special district. And we have our own tax base because it was voted in by the people to support the library. And that's all it can support.
Mhm.
And we had a county commissioner who led a movement to try and take away some of that money, figuring the county needed it more than the library, but they can't do that. But that's a topic of discussion about, I think we have 27 special districts in Curry County that all came about because of the need to have a fire district over here and another kind of district over here. And the 4-H and Extension District was another one in the 90s. And so it's complicated. And the more information we can get out so people understand why we have special money that needs to be library money.
And we are fortunate that we do have a special assessment district, because I have lived in communities where the money that funds the library comes from the city, and when money runs dry, they
Yep.
shutter the facility.
That
So
happened in Josephine County. Mhm.
yeah, and I think we actually have closer to 47 districts, Peggy. The point, yeah, because by the time you do all the divisions of all the little pieces, there's a lot of them. But that's beside the point. The point you actually made that is really important to me is that when the when we set up our special assessment district for our library taxation and income, that the purpose of that was to protect those monies, to acquire those monies and protect those monies. And when the local county commissioner decided that they wanted to acquire them for other purposes, they could not do it because they're protected monies. And that has been offered as the reason why we can't save money for capital investment, because they might steal our money, and that's not correct. They can't
steal it.
steal our money. They can't. So the idea that we don't have to save for the future does not have any basis in foundation. And I know Julie will have an opinion about this, and I really don't want to go there. I just want to point this out, that nobody can take that money from us. We should be saving for capital improvements. Maybe I've got, I think I'm looking at the wrong webpage. Maybe it's not 47. I'm not sure, but I'd have to count them closer to 40. But in any case, it doesn't matter. The point simply is that, yes, that's how we solve the problem of lack of funding. We create a special assessment district so that we could continue to have these services that we need. I mean, we even have Mountain Drive with its own assessment district, so we have these different ones throughout the whole county.
The number is 42.
Yeah, 42. Sounds right, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay, all very interesting. I've been taking lots of notes. And what I wrote down about how will we know we're making a difference? Like, how do we know that people see us as a strong organization, that we feel that we're a strong organization? Kathleen, you talked a lot about like a majority of taxpayers see the value of the library. Yes, absolutely. Not everyone is going to use the library. If everyone did use the library, we'd be in big trouble. However, we want people to support us. And I mean, there's been national studies about this. And yes, for the most part, people support libraries even if they don't go in libraries. That Washington Post article from October 4th has all that data in it, recent data in it.
I did forward it to the board.
Awesome. It's a really good article. Yeah. Maybe people are less confused about how the library is funded. I put down, how do we know we're making a difference? Our capital replacement plan is funded. What else? How would you all know that the library is a strong organization?
Well, I mean, we stay in the black. We can fund the projects, the programs, the resources that we need on an annual basis. We all have a strong understanding of the budget, and we go out for the grants that will help us with the programs that we want to do. Like you said already, the capital replacement plan is in place and funded.
Our audits are consistently top of the line.
Yeah.
Showing fiscal responsibility.
I think also utilization numbers should go up. You should see more checkouts, whether they be hard or digital. So, our collection should see increased usage. If it doesn't, that suggests that maybe we need to reconsider what we're collecting, or because I think at the end of the day, if people are utilizing the library, then you're having success, whether that's checkout materials or whether that is using the facilities for meeting rooms, or participating in reading groups, or deciding that they want to come listen to opera, which is what I suggested. Let me tell you right now, I actually don't care much about opera, but my folks loved it. And the people who are like 70, 75, Madame Butterfly, there's some excellent opera out there, and they don't have access to this, and it's not in our library collection. And I don't know if you can get this online or not. I'm not sure you could buy it. I mean, we did, but how do you use this? And how many older people who just want to listen to Iolanthe will actually go out and buy it because they know they're going to watch it one time, so they're not going to do it. But if we could present it, then we can get more engagement by having programs that people wish to participate in like that.
Yeah.
Another thing that shows that what you're talking about is the facility. The facility is in excellent condition because we picked up all kinds of repairs and needed improvements that had been let go for a long time. And so now everything's squared away. as long as that building continues to be well-maintained, in good shape, comfortable, attractive, people can come in and go, wow. That shows the strength in our organization.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else on strong organization before we move to vision and mission?
And you
You're
thought you were going to
really-
get out of here at 8.
You're doing really good staying on track. I really appreciate it. Listen, it's 10:30 here in Central Illinois. So like I've been asleep usually for like 2 hours at this point. So okay, let's set this aside for just a moment. Let's talk about vision and mission. And if you go to the last page in your handout, or if you've got the agenda on the second page, it has your current vision and mission statements. And so let me talk about what the difference is between vision and mission. And then we can talk about your current statements and if you have suggestions for changes. So vision is an outward facing statement that communicates the aspiration that you hope to achieve in your community. So it's not about the library. Like your vision shouldn't be like, we hope to be the best library in the world. Like who cares about that? Like your vision should be something compelling to community members, like how what difference does the library make to them, right? Your mission, on the other hand, is usually longer, much more concrete, and it talks about here's what we do as an organization to hopefully achieve our aspirational vision. So I think about these two statements like you're at a weekend party and somebody says, oh, you're on the library board? Like, what does the library do? Vision statement, right? Well, we are a community that provides access to resources that broaden horizons, increase participation, and foster creativity. Okay, how do you do that? Mission statement. Our library provides a welcoming environment with access to diverse resources and activities to inspire new ideas, build connections, and promote lifelong learning and growth. So both of your statements are pretty solid. You know, when I think about library vision and mission statements, and I look at hundreds of these a year, I feel like you've got some really good, you know, keywords in there that describe a lot of what you've talked about tonight. But what I'm curious about is, do these still resonate with you? Like, how do you feel about these statements? Do you have suggestions for changes, or are you like, no, you know what? These still sound good to me. I don't think we need to mess with these and change these. It's always a good idea to kind of check in and just ask, like, are these statements that we feel good about? And Julie, I don't know if you want to say anything about like where these statements came from, or like how you use these statements, how you feel about them to get us started.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. Let's see, hang on. So this came about in our last strategic planning session. And so the rep that we used was a state library consultant, and she came and met with everyone as well. In that situation, the staff workshopped and came up with the vision and mission rather than the board. And so we early in the adoption of the our first strategic plan, it was the library's first strategic plan, we used that quite a bit. You know, it was kind of just our guiding force. We'd remind when things came up, are we going to do this? Then we would kind of go back to those. It's kind of, you know, we're a few years in and past the end of our strategic plan, so that's waned a bit. I mean, I think the messages are good. I'm not particularly tied to those words. There was a lot of wordsmithing done to get to where we got, and you can kind of tell that. So it wouldn't hurt to probably clean it up a little bit. But yeah, so I'm glad that you guys are working on this time.
Okay, so thank you for that background, Julie. All right, so let's take vision first. So your vision is that you have a community that provides access to resources that broaden horizons, increase participation, and foster creativity. Are there things you like about that statement? Are there things you think should be in that statement, maybe that aren't? And the way that we'll approach this is I'll listen to your feedback, and then I'll craft some various statements. I'll work with Julie and Kat to kind of narrow those down, and we'll bring you back some options. So you don't have to, we're not rewriting statements tonight. You're not wordsmithing tonight. You're just telling me, I like these words, or I think that we really talked about this thing. So that should be somehow reflected in our vision and mission statement. So any comments on your vision statement?
So I like the vision statement with the exception of the phrase increased participation in what? That kind of dangles to me. And so if you could reword that, I think they meant increased participation in the community or at the library or something.
How
The
about-
rest of it's great, I think.
How about increased involvement? Community
That-
involvement? Is that where you're going with that?
Well, maybe, it's just, it dangles, it doesn't, if you dropped that, if you said a community that provides access to resources that broaden horizons, comma, foster creativity, comma, and increase whatever in whatever, that would make some sense to me.
Yeah, the intention of it was community
That's what I
participation.
thought, yeah. Yeah. And maybe they didn't stick community in because then community's in there 2 times, and I get
Right.
that.
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, that makes
A
sense.
lot of over wordsmithing, right? It
Yep,
was
yep.
very in the weeds.
But
Yeah,
otherwise,
and
I think it says exactly what we want to do.
And Kathleen, I think to your point, like a lot of libraries are going to even like much shorter. And so maybe their vision is broaden horizons, increase engagement, and foster creativity, like just kind of those 3 little phrases could be a vision statement. I'm not saying that it should be or you know, whatever. But it could be that you really tighten it up so that it's more like a tagline versus like a whole sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of short and sweet.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I like including the word engagement. Because people who learn more through our resources might get out there and get more involved in their community and improve things.
Yeah, I agree, Peggy. Participation is a very passive thing. Engagement is a very active thing. I agree.
Mhm. Okay, Sue or Peggy, any other thoughts on things that you might like to see included or want us just to play around a little bit?
I think you should play around a little bit with what our discussion just has been, because there's nothing really wrong with this. It's just, I think it needs some more wordsmithing.
Sure, absolutely. And we're happy to do that. Sue, any thoughts from you?
Shorter and sweeter would be nice. I think the phrase "a community that provides access to resources" is maybe could be shortened into 1 or 2 words with a little bit of creative thinking. I'm not coming up with any good offers for you to consider, but something that makes it a little more concise, you know, basically 3 bullet points. That's really kind of where I think we want to get to.
Okay. Yeah, and really provides access to resources is one of those things that it's like, well, is that the vision or is that the mission? Like, is that what we do as a library, provide access to resource? So I know that gets kind of confusing, like where does it actually go? And, you know, in the end, it doesn't really matter as long as you're happy with what it's communicating. But that's definitely something that we'll think about. And I like the idea of like the 3 bullet points. That's a very kind of popular way right now to do a vision statement, is just, again, kind of 3 words or 3 little short phrases.
And you can freshen it up also. Instead of broadening horizons, you could talk about expanding horizons. I mean, there's ways to freshen it a bit. There's nothing
exactly.
There's nothing really wrong with it the way it stands, in my opinion, but it, you know, we could freshen it up a bit.
Yep.
And you might be able to lose access to, because a community that provides resources.
True.
Okay, cool. All right. Mission statement. Take a look at that again and give me some feedback about what you like or might like to see changed or included.
Oh, just one comment before you go to that. I mean, even something providing resources too, and just skip all the, yeah. So now back to your mission statement.
Yeah, that's good too. Thank you. One thing I will say is that the style that we're seeing mission statements is that they start with we. So instead of like our library, it would just be like we provide. You're always going to use this statement like on your website or on library documents. So you don't need to say our library. It also makes it a little more personal, like you're owning your mission too. So that's just one change that we might consider, is saying like we provide a welcoming environment with, you know, if whatever we go with. So thoughts on your mission statement?
I like that.
Anything
you can-
standing out here?
You could even shorten it down to, we wish to inspire new ideas, and just cut to the quick,
Yeah.
or something
I
like that.
like the build connections too. And the promoting lifelong learning and growth. So I'm not sure if we want to just have one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I think she meant just pull the front of that out and just start with we provide,
Okay.
or we inspire new, what did you
Yeah.
mean? So we inspire new
Yeah.
ideas, build connections, and promote lifelong learning and growth? Is that what you meant?
Well, that is what I said, but that's not quite right, because we're not actually inspiring anybody. People have to do their own inspiration, but we provide the tools for them to inspire.
Mhm. I do
You-
like, though, keeping a welcoming environment in there somehow, just
Mm.
because
I do too.
that's one of the keys of our library, I think, is that we welcome all as best we can with limitations. Very few.
So, we're kind of back down to the thing. There's nothing really wrong with this mission statement, but, if we can freshen it up a little bit, that would probably be a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't care one way or the other about whether or not inspire is in there. Like, I don't feel strongly about that, but I do think the library inspires people. Our programs, our books, the things we provide inspire people.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing that I feel like you all talked about a lot that is missing a little bit here is just that like connection to information. I mean, you talked a lot about being the place in the community where people can come and get information about the community. I mean, building connections. I'm wondering if something about information and providing access to information is something that should be there as fundamental to what you do.
I think that would be useful, yes. Yeah.
I love the lifelong learning and growth. That to me is a very library thing. It differentiates you from like the school. Yeah. And to me, the build connections also is not just like among people, but even, with the world, through your computers and that kind of thing. So I always love connection in a mission statement too.
It's been running through my mind. A word that has come up a lot in this board conversation is hub, like a community hub. And so that's not necessarily a bad concept to get into the mission, since that seems to be a potentially huge goal.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Any other thoughts on missions? Okay. We'll play around with some options. Thank you for that. Okay. As we're starting to wind down here, kind of zoom back out in your mind, related to the conversation we just had. Did we miss anything? Like, as you were thinking about coming tonight and talking about the future of the library, is there something that's on your mind that you feel like we didn't really cover in any way? Or do you feel like we kind of touched on everything in some way?
If we come up with something, can we email you and let you know?
Absolutely.
I really don't think we held anything back. I think we were all, upfront and candid, and it's all obvious that we all care about this library a whole bunch and the community. I feel really good about this conversation.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, great. Okay. So here's what. Go ahead, Peggy. Sorry.
One little historical thing to
Yeah.
throw in here. Back when the community college was accepted into the community, voted in, and began holding classes and so forth down here, one of the points that was brought up was that where were they going to put the community college library? And our library made an agreement with the college to be that library. Not to provide, because it's only community college, it doesn't need to have huge academic resources. But if you're taking a literature class and you need to come and check out a book, you can get it instead of having to communicate with the library at the college in Coos Bay and have it shipped down. And I don't know if that belongs anywhere in here. I just thought I'd throw it in because that's a partnership that's happened ever since 1960 something or other.
Wow. Okay.
I guess my last comment about the mission statement is working the word future into there would be nice.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure in what way, but
Okay.
along that line, because you want to feel like you have, I mean, a mission statement is about vision. I mean, it's, you have a vision statement, but it's about how we're going, how are we going to, what is it, where do we want to be, I guess is really what the mission statement is about. Where do I want to be?
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. We'll look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, so next steps. I took, gosh, 8 pages of notes here as you all have been talking. I've got the notes from the staff retreat as well. We're going to put together an outline. Kat and Julie and I already have a meeting scheduled to go over that and kind of refine it. From there, we'll develop an actual plan document. So this will be, you know, what you're used to seeing if you click on an organization's strategic plan that kind of describes our process and talks about each of the areas. I'll be at your November board meeting to go over that. We'll get your feedback and comments at that point. We can make changes. After everybody feels good about the plan, we'll start to transition to implementation. So that'll happen here at the end of the year, beginning of next year. So those are kind of the next steps. I would love to close by just asking each of you like something that you're excited about from this conversation. Like you all talked about a lot and I appreciate how engaged you were in the conversation, but is there something that is kind of standing out in your mind that you're like, you know, that was really cool that we talked about that. So Peggy, you want to go first? Anything that's exciting to you from our conversation?
Well, actually, what I've been thinking about as we've been going through this conversation is that this was a great team building activity. We don't often sit down and talk candidly like this about, because Sue's pretty new. We have a member that's going off the board and Pat's not well, but to sit down and actually hash things out like this, I think was a very good exercise. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Peggy. Kathleen, how about you? Something exciting or a reflection?
How about I just say ditto?
That's
No,
fine.
I think Peggy was right on. I've been so looking forward to doing this strategic planning because I know our past one was supposed to have been done last year and we just couldn't get to it. And so this is exciting and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I'm looking forward to, you know, how we can implement everything that we're hoping to do.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, Sue, how about you?
I think that I think I agree with these other two ladies that it's good to have frank conversations, and we can't really do this in a board meeting setting. So this has been a very good opportunity to flesh out some of these forward-looking things and what we've done in the past and what we could do better, because this is really, at the end of the day, that's really what we're here for, is to make our library better. And even though we don't agree always on what the priorities are, or even how to implement the things that we do agree on, it is important to have conversations like this. So I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Sue. Julie, any reflections from you from this conversation? I mean, you listened in on the staff as well. So anything you want to say to kind of close us out here?
I guess it's all echoing that. I think this has been a really great process. It's with the staff and with the board, and getting all of these things and having you here to distill them and pull out what's really standing out as important is great. And it's helpful for me. You know, this is a huge part of my job is working off of a strategic plan. And so this is really helpful as we move forward, and I'm looking forward to implementing your ideas.
Awesome. Thank you.
I do have a little question for Julie.
Yes,
Do we have any way of knowing how many people might have watched this session tonight?
I was kind of checking every now and then, and it would say like 4 people streaming, 3 people streaming, no people streaming. So it was kind of up and down. It's a long meeting, but certainly there will be statistics on YouTube about how many people watched that I can share with you later. You might be able to go to the video and see it yourself, just the number of views.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody have any final questions before we sign off for the night?
No.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate your attention. It's been great to talk with all of you. I wish I could have been there in person with y'all. That would have been a lot of fun. Maybe next time. But thank you again for your attention. And I'll see you at your November board meeting so you can see how this all came together.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Good night.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.